Hi guys, you're listening to episode 3 of the planetkambo.com podcast, and in this episode we're going to talk about passion and purpose and how to find it, how to know when you're off track, and just throwing in a couple of stories, well, mostly stories about how we got experienced in this area or learnt lessons in this area. So, to start off, John, you're working on planetkambo.com now as a founder.
Yep.
And you seem pretty passionate about it.
Absolutely.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Okay. So for me, Kambo was something that I did. It was a healing modality that I'd used. I'd received Kambo many times from different practitioners. And when my business partner and I, Dave, who was the co-founder of Planet Kambo, we were looking to start a new project, and this came up, and it was like, okay, this is something we could really, we can. It's close to our hearts. It's something we feel passionate about, and we could really turn it into something and bring this amazing healing modality to the world.
Okay, great. So why don't we go into a little bit of a backstory?
Sure.
And so when people hear this term passion and purpose,
yep,
they're not exactly, sometimes they're not exactly sure what it means, right?
Right. So it's an interesting thing. The universe, whatever you want to call it, there's different words for this thing, but there is a force that's driving everything. We'll call it the universe.
Life, the
force, the universe, whatever. There's a universal force that's driving everything. And that force wants the best for everybody and everything. It's just a natural way that things work. And when you align yourself with that force, with the universe, it will pave the way for you to be successful. This is something I've learned in a very metaphysical way, beyond the physical reality that we live in. In a metaphysical way, there is a force that's driving everything that wants the best for mankind and
the greater
good. The greater good of everything. And what you need to do, or what I've done definitely, and it's great if you can do it, is when you find that thing that you're supposed to do. I feel like everybody has a part to play in that. We're all manifestations, vessels of that force, and you just need to find your niche, your purpose. And when you do, then it will help you. It will help you to be successful. There's nothing worse than doing something that you hate every day. Even if you're earning loads of money, doesn't matter. If you hate your job, it's the worst thing in the world. Spending all it, because we all spend more time working than we do doing anything else. So if you have a job that you don't like, it doesn't really matter how much money you earn. It's soul destroying, and it's something that I experienced. That when I used to work, I went from left school, went to working in an office, and I liked it to begin with. But after 10 years. And I worked for 2 different companies, and it got to the point where I just didn't enjoy it anymore. And I'd have to go, I'd have to commute in to spend all day at this place doing this thing that I didn't like, and it's completely soul destroying. It got to the point where like the alarm would go off in the morning, and I would just dread going in, and I'd be like, oh, I can't believe I've got to go and spend 9 hours doing this thing that I don't really. It's working for somebody else, doing something for somebody else that I don't really believe in or care about, and it's earning me money, but that's it, and that's not living. That's and obviously we all have to we have to live, we all have to earn money, but life is really about finding your vocation, finding that thing that you can do that you enjoy, and then the money doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. Like, you can have all the money in the world, but if you spend all day stressing doing this job that you hate, it the money doesn't really make a lot of difference. It could certainly make it easier, but as I was saying, what it's about is finding your purpose, finding the thing that you were supposed to do, what you were put here to do. And that's what I've found, having gone through this journey of working in an office, and then I was then a professional poker player for a few years, which was interesting to say the least. And I took a huge risk with that, in that I quit my job to play poker for a living, because I just found that I knew I didn't want to do this job anymore, and I was playing poker and I was enjoying it, and I thought to myself, I can do this for a living. And I said to myself, as soon as I'm earning enough money from playing poker, I'll quit my job. And then I realised it will never happen, because until you play full time, you're not able to devote enough time to playing poker to earn enough money to give me that security that I really
craved.
No, to give me the security that I knew that it would be okay.
Yeah.
But what I did was, whenever I would take holiday from work, and I would use that time. Let's say I'd take a week off, and I would play poker full time during that week. And during that week, I'd always make enough money. And then I took this huge plunge of, I've just got to do it. If I don't do it, I'll never know. And I'm feel very grateful and fortunate that it was happening around that time when poker was booming. There was a poker boom from, it was 2005 to about 2009, 2010 was the poker boom.
When did you get in on it, man?
2000, I would say. When did I start playing? So I quit my job in 2007. I started playing around 2005. So it was like 2 years of playing before I did it for a living. And yeah, I took a huge risk, but I knew I couldn't continue doing what I was doing because it was killing me, doing this job that I hated. So I took a risk, and I quit my job, and I never looked back.
As you said, it was soul destroying.
It was. And even though poker wasn't the healthiest job, and I realise now it was never going to be the thing that I was going to do long term. At the time, I didn't know that, but it's one of the things that's led me to where I am now, and it allowed me freedom. And that was one of the best things that I loved about it. It was like being released from prison.
Yeah. From
having no free time and having to get up at 6 a.m. and commute into this place that I didn't want to go, and coming back in the evening. You leave your house, it's dark. You come home, it's dark in the winter, and you spend all your time at this place, and it's just that, and it wasn't enjoyable. And then playing poker for a living was great fun. It was like, it's what I do in my free time anyway. And yeah, it was great, but also not the healthiest job. Playing online poker, it's very hard to find balance, because when you do that, you spend all day in front of the computer. It's the same thing really, but it's doing something that I enjoy. But poker is also, it's addictive. It fires off those dopamine receptors in your brain that we've talked about on previous podcasts.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect to it where I'm doing a gambling activity that is giving me a lot of dopamine hits. It's very rewarding, but I know ultimately it's quite selfish. Like it's not to the betterment of the greater good. It's just for me. And a lot of poker players struggle with balance, finding balance in your life, because you're doing something that can be addictive. It's hard not to just do it all the time. And what I found was I just did it to the exclusion of everything else, because then all I wanted to do was play poker all the time. That was it. So poker was like a bridge for me between working in an office and doing what I'm doing now. It gave me the freedom to have time to start doing other things, and that's kind of led me to where I am now. And I realised I was always going to be doing this. What I'm doing, Kambo, was this work. I was always going to end up doing this. The rest of it was just the journey to get here.
But it's interesting. So tell us more about the journey, how it led up. Because if you're quitting your job and you've got bills to pay, and then you're playing poker, looking back now, how do you see things lined up? Or
to be honest with you, it was insane. I would say back then, but poker was different back then. It was a lot easier. I wouldn't do it now, and I wouldn't suggest people do it now, because playing online poker is quite tough. It's changed a lot. The landscape has changed. It's completely different. So back then it was quite easy to make money. You didn't need to be amazing at poker to make money online. Now you've got to be good. Everybody's improved. There's software out there. There's lots of websites for coaching. Everybody's got really good at poker. So the standard is much higher, and you need to really stay on top of your game and be evolving as a poker player to make money and to continue to make money. So it went from being a quite an easy way to make money with lots of recreational players to now it being much more difficult. I mean, something happened. I won't go into too much detail because it's for people that don't play poker. It won't. Yeah. It's boring, you know. But there was something called Black Friday that happened. When was it? I think it was 2000, maybe 2009. Can't remember. But in America, they passed this bill that said that American banks couldn't fund online poker accounts, and one of the biggest online poker sites suddenly one day just banned all American players, and that was the beginning of the end for online poker. Because when you suddenly remove 80% of the field, you're removing most of the recreational players. So what you were left with was a much smaller pool of recreational players and a much larger pool of professionals. So poker's an ecosystem. Like any ecosystem, you've got apex predators at the top, and you've got bottom feeders at the bottom, and you need a healthy ecosystem of recreational players that come in that enjoy playing but they lose their money, and then you have like medium skilled players, and then you've got like, you know, really good players, and there's a whole ecosystem. In the same way as in a pond you've got bottom feeders, fish, and then you've got like the apex predators at the top. It's exactly the same, and you need a healthy ecosystem to run. And when this happened, it completely ruined the ecosystem, and suddenly certain levels of players started dying out because the ecosystem's been ruined. In the same way that if you messed up the ecosystem of a pond, certain levels, like certain fish at certain levels, would start dying out because there's not enough food for them. So that happened in 2000, I think it was 2009, and that was the beginning of the end, and it became harder and harder to make money.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's good. It kind of coincided with the banking crisis.
Did it? Okay. I might be wrong. I could be wrong with the year, but I think I've got
2008.
It's around then.
So a lot of players were getting their money from American banks, I take it.
Well, no, yeah. Essentially, all the American players suddenly couldn't play on the biggest site. This website, I won't mention it by name, but it had the monopoly on poker, online poker. It was the main site that everybody played on. Suddenly they said, right, no more American players. If you're from America, that's it. Account closed. And that made online poker much less lucrative, and it was just suddenly now a bunch of highly skilled professionals trying to take money off each other, which doesn't work. You need to have, money coming in.
Ecosystem.
Yeah, you need to have a proper ecosystem. So when that happened, I started looking at other things. It happened naturally anyway, that there was other things that I was getting interested in. But I'm still very grateful. Poker it got me out of that job and into a life of freedom and flexibility that allowed me to then develop myself and to get to where I've got to today. But as I was saying earlier about finding your vocation, this is also ties in with the law of attraction, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And what the law of attraction really is about, so it's not about holding in mind what you want. So if you think, well, I want lots of money. So if I just think about money all the time, then I'm going to get money. It's not in it. It's a kind of cliched way to talk about it. What the law of attraction is really about is it's about focusing on your passion and thinking about that all the time because you love it and you enjoy it and it's your passion and that's why you're thinking about it. When you do that and it's something that is aligned with the truth, aligned with the universe, and it's for the betterment of everybody and everything, then the universe will pave the way for you to be successful, and the money will come. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. You might have to go through tough times with it. But if you are doing something that is for the greater good and you are passionate about it, you will be successful. And that's something that I've found firsthand.
There's a lot of tough times along the way.
And there have been, absolutely, there have been tough times. But I'll give you another example. So a friend of mine used to work in investment banking, a lot of money, spent 15 years, I think it was, working in investment banking, got himself to earning a very good wage, absolutely hated his job, hated it. Like I did, just dreaded going in, but he would go in. And he quit his job he always loved dogs, like dogs were his passion, so he quit his job to go and work at dogs kennels. Which is, I know it sounds insane, right? Yeah, that's what he did. So he had enough money saved up that he could support himself while he was working at dogs kennels, and his plan was to become a dog trainer. And that's what he does now. I mean, obviously this is, we're going back, whatever it is now that he quit, maybe, I don't know when it was, 8 years ago, maybe more, I can't remember exactly. And he worked his way up. He started out getting experience working at dogs kennels and working at various things to do with dogs. And now he's got his own dog training firm and he loves his job. He wakes up in the morning and, he goes to people's houses and he helps them train their dog, like behaviourally train the dog. And he loves it. And he said even when he was working at the dogs kennels, he'd wake up in the morning and he would be literally cleaning out shit. That's like literally cleaning out dog kennels, right? Which is like wiping up dog shit, for want of a better phrase. He didn't care.
He enjoyed it.
Because he's passionate about dogs.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. He's found his passion, he's found his vocation, and now he's very, very successful. And through that, he's found that in the same way that I have with the work that I'm doing, is the word is love. Yeah. It's that you really, when you're working with these people, it's like when somebody comes for a ceremony, a Kambo ceremony, my sole purpose in that ceremony is to help them. That's all I think about. It's nothing to do with me. It's not my ego or being greedy or about money. It's how can I run the best ceremony that I can run, and how can I make sure that these people get the most out of the Kambo and are as comfortable as possible throughout the process. And through doing that, I get a feeling that it's worth more than any money. And he has the same thing. Funny enough, I hadn't seen him for a long time, and we met up the other night, went out for dinner. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and we talked about it, and it's the same thing. He said when he goes to somebody's house, and the first thing he does when he gets there is he greets the dog, and he said immediately, as soon as he does that, the feeling that he gets is it's the best feeling in the world. And from the moment he walks in there, his sole purpose is how can I help this person in the best way that I can, and how can I help this dog so that the dog and the owner can have this fantastic relationship. And it's identical. It's an identical thing, just on a different context. That's what it's about. And through finding your vocation, through finding your passion, that is something that's for the greater good. You will get this feeling, and that feeling is, I don't know, there isn't really a word for it, but I'd call it love. You could call it love, and it's not romantic love. It's more of a metaphysical love.
It's also a peace of mind as well.
Yeah,
I find when I've been in things that I didn't enjoy, your mind kind of, you're distracted, you're not engaged, your mind becomes more incoherent. But when you're doing something that you're enjoying, your mind becomes more present, and it's almost like time. You're not looking at the clock thinking, oh God, how much more of this have I got to do?
Exactly. And that when I used to work, it got to the point where I was just literally counting down the minutes to when I could go home. Now, doing the Kambo on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, it's the highlight of my week. I love it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a chore. I never think, oh God, I've got to do another Kambo ceremony. I go there and I meet all the team and some new people that have come to take Kambo, and it's I'm in my element.
Yeah.
When I'm that's it. When I'm holding space, it's like this is what I was born to do. And in the same way as my friend, that's what he was born to do. When he turns up at the house and there's a dog that needs behavioural training, he walks in there, and from that point on, he's in his element. So that's what it's about. Finding your element, finding your passion, and then being able to earn money or make a living from it.
And it shines through. You can really tell when someone's enjoying what they're doing, and they just have this calm, relaxed demeanour about them, and you can just tell when someone's on point.
Exactly, and that is what life is all about. I couldn't put it in any other way. Is if you're doing something you don't enjoy, if you're working and you feel like this is not what I'm supposed to do, then sort it out. Find your passion and start making moves towards it, and it will happen if it's meant to. If that's, like I said, the universe wants what's best for you, and it wants what's best for everyone. So once you find this thing, whatever it be, you just start aligning yourself with it, and you'll find synchronicities start happening, money starts coming, signs start appearing, and it nudges you. Then the universe will nudge you in that direction, and it will give you signs that you're on the right track.
I think some examples from my life are of there's been very, very convenient timing with some things. So I remember I was using my laptop, and my laptop charger was fraying, and it was getting to a point where it was about to cut out.
Yeah.
And and I'd started a business, so I wasn't earning money. And just before, because I was wondering how long is this charger going to last? It's going to cost me 70 quid to replace, and I was counting the pennies at that point. And just before I received my first check from the business, the laptop charger cut out completely. So my first check, I was able to write a new check to upgrade my laptop.
Yep. No, that stuff happens all the time. Funny little synchronicities and signs and things. It's all interconnected, and I've experienced it, that having come from a very, being very caught up in the physical, in the story of the physical, but having one foot in the metaphysical as well, in the spiritual. As I've got more and more into this, I'm now finding I've got 2 feet in the spiritual, and actually I'm realising that this whole thing it's like a movie or a dream that's playing out, and I'm really the dreamer of the dream, not the character in the dream. The character in the dream is the victim, it's like the thing, the
object of
object in the physical world. And actually I'm realising that really this is I'm just a conduit for the universal force that's flowing through me. And as I'm doing this work, I can feel it flowing through me. Your ego gets in the way. This is another thing, that your mind, the mind chatter, the ego, fear, all this stuff will come up, and it will get in the way, and it will block your intuition. And what you need to do is be able to separate it out, is to not let your ego block what you're doing, and allow that universal force to flow through you. And then you get into these flow states, these states of being where everything's just happening. Like when you watch, if you watch a top sports person, like a tennis player, when they're playing tennis, or if you watch a musician on stage at a concert, when they're doing their activity, they're in a flow state. They're not thinking about it. They're not micromanaging what they're doing with their hands. Like if you watch Roger Federer or whatever, there's nobody there doing that. It's just happening. He's not really controlling what he's doing, because you can't. It's not possible to think about what you're doing with your stroke when you're in the middle of a tennis match. It's all muscle memory, right? It's all just happening. So you're getting into these flow states, and it doesn't have to be with musicians or with sports people. When you're holding a ceremony, you can get into a flow state, and it's about getting that voice in your head, that ego, that will block your flow state. When you're in your flow state, you're not thinking, you're just doing, and you're trusting that it's coming through you, and
you're acting out of a place from a natural intuitive
complete intuition. It's right, intuition, not thinking. That's right. Thinking really gets in the way. Obviously, thinking is useful, but it can really it can impede your development for sure. It has its place, but it's not for when you're in the middle of doing the activity. So the thing, for example, for the tennis player, the thinking comes when he's practicing, when he's working on his stroke with his trainer. That's the time when he's really thinking about what he's doing with his hand. Is when he's practicing. But when he's playing a match, he's not thinking about anything, because if you do it won't work. It will just break down. So thinking has its place, but when you're actually performing, then it's all about letting go, surrendering, and everything will just start to float.
That's a big spiritual principle, isn't it? Surrender.
Totally. It's hard to do. Sounds easy on paper. It's easy to say, very difficult to do. And it's about trust as well. And when you align with the force, with the universe, and you trust, then you become untouchable, unstoppable.
Yeah, I've definitely had periods where you feel that way, but then, like you say, the ego can get in the way, and you can get caught up in the physical again. So it's about trying to find that balance, I guess. What would you say to people who are in situations where the ego is in the way? How do they kind of stop that from happening?
Meditation, which we talked about in the last podcast. That's really a really good way. Get out of erratic multitasking and thinking, and you do that through meditation and various activities like that. So relieving stress, and like we talked about in the last podcast, becoming peaceful as much as possible, and then you'll find that the chatter, that the ego will start to recede, and B, you'll be able to see it for what it really is, which is that it's not you, it's just a tool, and it's not even a real thing. There's nothing there. It's just thoughts, really. So don't need to get rid of it. You just need to see it for what it is, and don't just believe everything that it says, because most of what it says is lies anyway.
It's the internal chatter bringing up all the objections.
Yeah. It's just the inner critic. It's a survival machine.
Yeah. All
it's doing is it's trying to survive.
But that's an important function as well.
Again, yes, it is. But don't think that you're actually, don't think that that's who you are. And for those of you that are into the spiritual stuff and have read books like The Power of Now and all this kind of stuff, then you know that you are not your thoughts. You identify with them, but they're not who you are. They're just happening. And they're very compelling. They tell a very compelling story, but they're not who you are. And who you really are is this vessel, this open vessel of universal energy that is striving for the betterment of everybody and everything.
So that sounds like a very awakened thing to say.
Yeah.
And once you start going down this path, it is regarded and termed spiritual awakening, right?
Yeah.
So, when you've been doing these things and following your passion and your purpose, you've been on a process of awakening now for
it's quite a long time.
Yeah.
Probably for about 5 years, a bit longer maybe even longer, like seven years, something like that. And it's all tied together. And at the heart of it is the realization that, and it sounds cliched when you say everything is one, but that's what it is. There's only one thing happening. There's one happening. There's not individuals or separate entities. There's just one process. It's a process that's happening. And it has an appearance. It appears like there's things and separate people and what have you. But underneath that, it's just one continuous process that's completely eternal. Yeah. I mean, that's quite a bold statement, but I mean, I could talk for hours. I could go into more detail. I mean, I could. Do you want to? We could do it on this podcast or start going into it, but
we'll leave it for next
I think we'll leave it for another one. But ultimately, aligning yourself with your purpose gets you in touch with this oneness, and oneness only wants what's best because it can't be any other way. Oneness, it just is.
So it's feeling connected to something larger than yourself.
Totally.
And this is pretty much what we've been covering. Like the passion and purpose is all supposed to connect to doing something where it's your sole purpose, where you feel in place, like you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. It's like balancing or walking a tightrope almost, or riding a bicycle. You've got to learn to balance it, and there are signs when you are on track and when you're off track. One guy I like to listen to, Peter Sage, he likes to say that there's the rumble strip of life on the highway, and as soon as you start driving off, that's when you get onto a rumble strip and you hear the of a car. So yeah, it's learning to...
It has a guide. I know what you're saying. It's got a guidance system. Once you're in tune and you're not just blind, you're aware, then the signs are very clear when you're on the right path and when you're not.
Yeah, just like a motorway has motorway signs and directions, then you can use that analogy to refer to life as well.
Yeah. And also go with your feeling. Everything you do, most things that you do, should feel good. Like when I'm doing what I'm doing now, it feels good. When I was doing what I was doing before, it didn't feel good. So that alone, the feeling itself.
There's a distinction there to be made though, because you might be doing something that's hard physically. Like some people say, they don't enjoy going to the gym, but they do it anyway. So on one level, you feel it's something that you need to do, and on another level, you might not like every part of what you're doing. But like your friend who was cleaning the dog kennel with dog waste, right?
Yeah. But for example, with the example you gave, if going to the gym, if you don't enjoy it, then find another exercise. Don't have to go to the gym. Do you know what I mean? If you find that actually gym just boring, then get into martial arts or calisthenics, or find something that you do enjoy. And yeah, if something feels right and it feels good, then it is. It's easy. It's obvious. If something doesn't feel right, then it's no good. If something does feel right, then it's good. But I'm sure if you go to the gym, even if you don't enjoy it, you still feel good after. I don't know anybody that could say that they went to the gym and didn't exercise and they just hate it and afterwards they feel awful. That's not. Do you know what I mean? It's been times when I go to the gym and I haven't had the best session, but afterwards, I sit in the sauna or something and I'm like, there's like endorphins being released and I feel good. Any physical exercise makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Really.
But I guess the point is that sometimes you've got to push yourself past that hard part in order to release the...
Yes. It's not a bed of roses. Everything, we've all got to go through... I mean, Kambo's a prime example, Kambo can be very unpleasant and intense, but at the same time, can also be amazing and feel great, and you always feel good after. So that's really what it's about.
It's learning to find pleasure in the pain as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
With Kambo, you go through a purge and you're throwing up, but the times I've done it twice now.
Yeah.
You feel like it's a process that you need to go through, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you're engaged. I guess that's a good way of putting it. When you feel engaged with something, even if it's difficult or it's hard, but you feel like, there's no other place you'd rather be at that moment in time.
Yeah, that's
a good signal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, with the Kambo, since we've started doing this different method, that I think we mentioned it on the first podcast.
Sapo.
Yeah, and I mean, I did it. When did I do it? Let me think. It's probably about a week ago now. It really was quite pleasant. Honestly, was not bad at all. At no point did I feel really unpleasant. It was quite pleasurable. That sounds weird and sort of sadomasochistic way, but it was not unpleasant at all. So I just let it in, surrendered, let it in, and then it was really soft and a beautiful experience.
I mean, you've worked with it for a while now, so it's surprising you haven't.
I know.
Done it earlier.
I know. But if it wasn't meant to happen until it did, and now I wouldn't do it any other way for myself. I wouldn't, definitely not.
So your latest passion is Sapo style.
Yeah, totally, man. It's the way forward. It feels natural. And that's something that any of you listeners, if you're interested, you'd like to come and do Kambo, then you can come and join us at one of our ceremonies. And we tend to do it that way now as a kind of standard, unless somebody asks to do it the other way. Then you can go through the Kambo process in a much more gentle way and really connect with the frog. That's what I feel when I do it this way.
Okay. I think that's a good place to begin to wrap it up.
Absolutely.
I think we've covered
Cool,
it. Talking about passion and purpose and
yeah,
some interesting stories there.
Cool, man.
Well, actually, how do you feel about taking risks, like in general? Because some risks you can overdo, right?
Totally. I mean, I did it when I quit my job to play poker. I'd just taken a mortgage out on my flat, so that was a huge risk. But I knew I had to do it. I took the plunge, and it's like, I'm just going to do this. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. I'll figure it out. There'll be do you know what I mean? Whatever. There'll always be there'll be a way out. In the moment, I'll find a way.
Yeah.
But in my head, there's always a story of like, oh my God, what are you doing? You shouldn't do this, and what if, and what, I just did it, and I literally started a new life. I quit my job from commuting to this place that I didn't want to go to, doing this job that I hated, and I moved into a flat that I bought with a mortgage and with all the pressure that comes with that, and I started playing poker for a living and never looked back. And that was a huge risk.
That's a big risk to take.
It was. And I mean, there's been plenty of other risks as well along the way, but it's a leap of faith.
Leap of faith.
That's what it is. It's deep level of trust, which at the time I didn't think about it in the same way that I would now. Now I know that the universe is supporting me. So in terms of with this business with the Kambo, I'm happy to take risks because I know that it's what's right, and I'm literally being supported by the universe.
Are there any times where you feel that the risk is too much to take and you want to hold off?
It's a good question. Again, it depends where you're at, because now I've developed this level of trust, which is still I'm not like 100% all the way there.
No one is.
But I've developed a level of trust where it's like, I know everything's going to be okay, because it always is. You always end up on your feet. And the universe is supporting me. So I'm now more apt to take a risk, because I know that if it feels right, if it's like this is going to make things better, or this is going to accelerate the growth of Planet Kambo, then I'll do it. But back then, I didn't have the level of development that I have now, and it was much more of a leap of faith. I kind of have I have more faith now. There's the thing. Enough has happened that I've got a lot of faith in the fact that I'm being supported. Back then, I didn't have that.
So you need to build up those reference experiences.
Yeah. But at the same time, it felt right in my gut. I knew I had to do that. I knew that once I'd thought about playing poker for a living, there was no way I wasn't going to do it. So,
I mean, in the Western world, we're kind of conditioned to listen to our minds a bit too much. But there's a lot of wisdom in the heart and the gut, because I mean, if you think about animals, for example, like lions or wolves, you know,
Yeah.
they basically live by their instincts, right?
Yep.
And as humans, we can get a little bit caught up in the mind and suppress some of those instincts that are coming up. So often there is a battle between the heart and the mind, because the mind has more resources available to it.
Yep.
It will always come up with justifications and excuses.
Yep. And it's a survival machine. That's what your mind is. So it's always going to have your survival at its what's the word? Like the foremost thing that it's considering is your survival.
Is priority.
It's priority, yeah. So it doesn't like taking risks because then you're threatened. So your mind would always jump to the worst conclusion, because if it didn't do that, you'd probably be dead by the time you were 12. It needs to have that, oh my God, what if this thing goes wrong, so that there's a level of protection. That's what it's for. It's for survival. So it's like using that as a tool rather than a guidance system.
Yeah.
When it comes to like life-threatening situations, that's when it's necessary. You know, if you didn't have that in you, then, you know, if you were a caveman and suddenly there's a saber-toothed tiger, you wouldn't run away, because you wouldn't be able to think, oh my God, I'm going to get eaten.
Mm.
There's that, you know, survival mechanism. But when that interferes with your life, so it starts to take non-life-threatening situations as if they were life-threatening, which happens with a lot of people that are traumatized, that your amygdala, your fight or flight system, becomes constantly switched on, and then mundane day-to-day things trigger you in the same way as you would as if it was a life-threatening situation, and that's PTSD to a certain extent, which I think we can probably talk about on another podcast. But,
well, we've talked about PTSD.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, thank you for...
No worries, man. We'll leave it there, yeah?
Yeah, thank you for going into that, and
We'll see you guys on the next podcast.
And if there's any questions, it's info@planetkambo.com.
Yeah, always happy to answer a question. info@planetkambo.com. So we'll see you next time.
Great, thank you. Bye.